The ice clinked against the crystal glass in my hand, a sound that should have been celebratory, but instead rang in my ears like a death knell. I was standing in the middle of a rented banquet hall, surrounded by aunts, uncles, cousins, and family friends who were all smiling, clapping, and raising their own glasses in my direction. It was supposed to be the happiest day of my life, my college graduation party. But the air felt heavy, suffocating, tainted by the perfume my mother wore and the underlying current of malice coming from the two people standing directly beside me. My mother had just pressed the drink into my hand, her fingernails digging slightly into my palm as she did so, a rigid, plastic smile plastered across her face for the benefit of the guests. My father leaned in close, draping an arm around my shoulder that felt less like an embrace and more like a restraint. Under the roar of applause and chatter, he leaned down to my ear so only I could hear him. His breath was hot and smelled faintly of scotch as he hissed 5 words that shattered the illusion of a happy family forever. "You're just a leech." Immediately after he pulled away, smiling broadly for a camera flash, I looked down at the drink my mother had insisted I take for the big toast. It was a vibrant, unnatural blue, something special she claimed she mixed just for me. But as I brought it closer to my lips, my nose caught a whiff of something underneath the sugary mixer, a sharp, chemical scent I recognized instantly from a traumatic childhood incident involving our family dog and a bottle of industrial strength Ipecac syrup my mother kept for emergencies. My stomach bottomed out. They weren't just insulting me on my big day. They were actively trying to physically humiliate me in front of everyone I knew. I stood there frozen, the condemned person on the scaffold, realizing the people who gave me life were trying to destroy it. Before I tell you what I did next, I need to ask you, if you knew your parents were about to publicly poison you just to watch you fall, would you just take it, or was I wrong for the absolute chaos I unleashed in response? To understand why my parents would do something so monstrous at my own graduation party, you have to understand the 22 years of psychological warfare that led up to that moment. I grew up in a house that looked perfect from the outside manicured lawn, 2 luxury cars in the driveway, annual vacations to expensive resorts. My parents were pillars of the community, involved in charities, always hosting dinner parties where they were the charming, benevolent hosts. But inside those 4 walls, I was less of a son and more of an investment vehicle, one that they constantly reminded me was underperforming. Everything in my life came with a price tag attached, a visible string that they could yank whenever I stepped out of line. They didn't love me unconditionally, they loved what I could do for their image. If I got an A-, I was an embarrassment. If I didn't make varsity, I was wasting their money on sports equipment. They constantly compared me to the children of their friends, highlighting my failures and magnifying their successes. The phrase, "after everything we've done for you," was the soundtrack of my childhood. It was practically burned into my brain. When it came time for college, the control tightened into a stranglehold. They insisted I go to their alma mater, a ridiculously expensive private university, even though I had gotten scholarships to better state schools. They wanted the prestige. They promised they would cover the tuition, that it was their gift to me so I could start life debt-free. It sounded generous, and for a fleeting moment, I thought maybe they actually cared. I was naive. That tuition wasn't a gift. It was ultimate leverage. Every single semester was a negotiation. If I wanted to change my major from pre-law to something I was actually passionate about, like graphic design, the money was threatened. If I didn't come home every single weekend to serve as a prop at their dinner parties, the money was threatened. I spent 4 years walking on eggshells, terrified that one wrong move would leave me stranded with insurmountable debt and no degree. I worked 2 part-time jobs just to have spending money for basic necessities because asking them for $20 for textbooks turned into a 3-hour lecture on my ingratitude and financial incompetence. By the time my senior year rolled around, I was a nervous wreck. I had developed severe anxiety and ulcers from the constant pressure. But I was also close to the finish line. I had stuck it out. I had gotten the degree they wanted, but I had also quietly built a portfolio of my design work on the side and landed a job offer in a different city starting 2 weeks after graduation. That job was my escape hatch. It meant financial independence. It meant I would never have to ask them for a dime again. The closer I got to graduation day, the more palpable their resentment became. You would think parents would be proud their child was becoming self-sufficient, but for narcissists like mine, my independence felt like a rejection. They were losing their favorite punching bag, their live-in scapegoat. The weeks leading up to the party were filled with passive-aggressive digs. My father would look at my packed boxes and mutter about how quickly I was abandoning the nest. My mother would sigh dramatically whenever I mentioned my new job, asking if I was sure I could handle the real world without their help. They insisted on throwing this massive graduation party. I begged for a small dinner, just the 3 of us, but they refused. "We have to celebrate our success," my mother had said, and the emphasis on our was unmistakable. The party wasn't for me. It was for them to take a victory lap, to show off their product to their friends one last time. Which brings us back to that banquet hall. The atmosphere that evening was thick with tension that only I seemed to feel. My parents were performing their roles perfectly, laughing too loudly, clapping men on the back, accepting congratulations for raising such a fine young man. Every time they looked at me, though, their eyes were cold, dead sharks swimming in a sea of fake warmth. About an hour into the party, the speeches began. My uncle mumbled through something sweet. My best friend told an embarrassing story, and then it was time for the main event, my parents. My father took the microphone, commanding the room's attention. He started a long, winding speech about the sacrifices of parenthood. He talked about the cost of private school tutors, the expensive summer camps, the burden of university tuition. He didn't mention my hard work, my late nights studying, or my achievements. He just listed prices. It felt like he was reading an invoice to the room. We gave him everything. He boomed, gesturing to me with a feigned look of paternal pride that didn't reach his eyes. We cleared the path so he could walk without stumbling, and today we present the return on our investment. The room clapped, oblivious to the fact that he was essentially calling me property. While he was speaking, my mother had bustled off to the small bar set up in the corner. I watched her out of the corner of my eye. She was fussing over 2 specific glasses. I saw her reach into her small, expensive clutch purse and pull out a tiny glass vial. She looked over her shoulder quickly, checking to see if anyone was watching. The bartender was busy at the other end of the bar. She quickly uncorked the vial and tipped a clear liquid into one of the blue drinks. She swirled it around, capped the vial, and slipped it back into her purse in one fluid motion. My heart hammered against my ribs. I knew that vial. I hadn't seen it in years, but I remembered it from when our golden retriever ate a sock and my mother had to induce vomiting. It was highly concentrated ipecac syrup. It wasn't lethal, not in that dose, but it was designed to empty a stomach violently and immediately. She walked back towards me, a beatific smile pasted on her face, carrying the 2 blue drinks. My father was just wrapping up his speech. So let us raise a glass," he announced to the graduate. "May he never forget where he came from and who paid for the ticket." The room murmured appreciatively. My mother reached me and handed me the glass she had tampered with. "For you, darling," she said sweetly, loud enough for those nearby to hear. "Your favorite color." Then my father leaned in for that side hug, his breath hot in my ear. "You're just a leech." The hiss was venomous, a distillation of years of resentment. He pulled back, smiling. My mother raised her own untreated blue drink. To our son, she cried, "So I'm standing there. The room is spinning. The people who should love me most in the world have just insulted me in the vilest way possible and handed me a drink meant to make me violently ill in front of everyone I know, likely to prove their point that I can't handle the real world, that I'm weak, that I still need them to take care of me." It was a power move designed to break me right at the moment of my escape. I want you to pause for a second and really put yourself in my shoes. Your heart is pounding, you feel betrayed on a cellular level, and you have about 5 seconds before everyone expects you to drink. What do? Do you throw the drink down and cause a scene, looking like the ungrateful brat they always painted you as? Do you quietly not drink it and try to escape? Or do you do something else entirely? Go ahead and comment below what your move would have been, because I honestly don't know if mine was brilliance or madness. The room was waiting, 50 people with glasses raised, looking at me. My parents were staring at me with an intensity that was terrifying, their smiles rigid, waiting for me to take that sip and seal my humiliation. The anger inside me, usually a simmering pot I kept a tight lid on, boiled over. It wasn't a hot, screaming anger. It was cold. It was calculating. It was the realization that I owed these people absolutely nothing anymore. The diploma was in my name. The job was mine. I was free, and they were trying to claw me back down one last time. "Wait," I shouted, my voice cracking slightly but loud enough to stop everyone from drinking. Lowering my glass, I stepped away from my parents and turned to face the crowd. My parents looked confused, a flicker of panic crossing my mother's face. "Before we drink," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "I want to say something. My dad just talked about everything they gave me, and it's true, they paid for a lot, but there's one thing they gave me that's more valuable than tuition." I turned and looked directly at my parents. They looked wary now. My mother's grip on her own glass tightened. "They taught me that everything in this world is a transaction," I continued, my confidence growing with every word. "They taught me that love is conditional and that kindness always comes with a bill attached. And I want to thank them for that lesson, because it prepared me for the real world better than any college class." The room was deadly silent now. The smiles were faltering. This wasn't the standard thank you speech. My father started to step forward, his face darkening, ready to interrupt me and take control back. I knew I had to act fast. I turned back to my parents, putting on the same fake smile I had learned from watching them my entire life. "But most importantly," I said, my voice dripping with faux sincerity, "they taught me the importance of sharing. Mom, Dad, you've given me so much today. I can't possibly accept this special toast all for myself." Before they could process what was happening, I stepped toward my mother. In one swift motion, I took the glass from her hand, the safe one, and pressed the poisoned glass into her palm. It happened so fast, a sleight of hand born of pure adrenaline. Her eyes widened in shock. She looked down at the glass in her hand, the one she knew contained the emetic. "I insist," I said, raising her safe glass high, "to the best parents a guy could ask for, to the investors." I tipped my head back and downed half the drink in one gulp. The room, relieved the awkward tension was over, followed suit. To the parents, they echoed. My mother stood frozen. She held the poisoned glass, staring at it in horror. My father, oblivious to the switch, nudged her sharply. "Drink, Martha," he muttered through clenched teeth, needing to maintain the facade of the happy family unit. He took a large swig from his own scotch glass. My mother looked at me. I looked right back at her, my eyes hard. I knew she wouldn't dare cause a scene by refusing to drink her own toast. It would raise too many questions. She was trapped in her own web of appearances. With a trembling hand, she raised the glass to her lips and took a small, hesitant sip. "Drink up, Mom," I encouraged loudly. "It's delicious." Under the pressure of dozens of eyes, including my demanding father's, she took a large gulp. I watched her throat swallow. The deed was done. I didn't have to wait long. The stuff was potent. We had just started mingling again, the low murmur of conversation returning to the room, when I saw my mother clutch her stomach. Her face went several shades pale, the makeup standing out in stark contrast to her skin. A sheen of cold sweat broke out on her forehead almost instantly. She grabbed my father's arm, her knuckles white. "Richard," she gasped, her voice strained and guttural. I don't feel well." My father, irritated by any deviation from his perfect evening, hissed at her. "Pull yourself together, Martha. People are watching." But she couldn't. The ipecac was doing its job with ruthless efficiency. A loud, wet gurgle erupted from her throat, shocking the people standing nearest to them. She doubled over, clapping a hand over her mouth, but it was too late. What happened next was a symphony of chaos. My mother, projectile, vomited right in the middle of the dance floor. It wasn't just a little sick. It was violent, continuous, and horrifyingly voluminous. The bright blue liquid splashed across the polished wood floor, splattering the expensive shoes of my aunt and the trousers of my father's business partner. The smell was instant and overwhelming, a mix of acrid stomach acid and sugary blue raspberry. Gasps and shrieks erupted from the guests. People recoiled, knocking over chairs in their haste to get away from the splash zone. My father stood there, frozen in absolute mortification, his expensive suit splattered with blue bile. My mother was on her knees now, heaving uncontrollably, her carefully coiffed hair hanging in her face, her dignity completely annihilated. I stood off to the side, watching the scene unfold like a slow-motion disaster movie. I felt a strange detachment, a numbness. I wasn't happy, exactly. It was gruesome, but I also felt a profound sense of justice. The humiliation they had planned for me had rebounded onto them tenfold. The party dissolved instantly. Guests were grabbing their coats, muttering excuses, desperate to escape the smell and the sheer awkwardness of the situation. My father was trying to pull my mother up, his face a mask of fury and embarrassment, but she couldn't stop heaving long enough to stand. I didn't help them. I walked over to the table where I had left my car keys. As I walked past my father, who was now shouting at a waiter to get a mop, he locked eyes with me. There was no smugness left in his face, just pure, unadulterated hatred. He knew. He didn't know how, but he knew I had done this. "You," he snarled, pointing a shaking finger at me, ignoring his wife retching on the floor beside him. "You did this." I stopped. The room was almost empty now, save for a few straggling relatives looking on in horror. "No, Dad," I said calmly, my voice echoing slightly in the emptying hall. "You did this, you and Mom. You tried to poison me at my own graduation. You called me a leech. I just made sure the right person got the medicine." I turned and walked out of the banquet hall, the sounds of my mother's sickness and my father's incoherent shouting fading behind me. I walked out into the cool night air, got into my car, and drove straight to my apartment. I packed the last few things I needed, loaded up my car, and left that city that very night. I didn't wait 2 weeks for my job to start. I crashed on a friend's couch in my new city until my lease began. I haven't spoken to my parents since that night. I blocked their numbers, their emails, and their social media accounts before I even crossed the city limits. I heard through the family grapevine, before I cut most of them off too, that the fallout was immense. Their reputation in their little social circle was shattered. It's hard to maintain the image of the perfect family when the matriarch violently vomits blue sludge all over the community leaders at a formal event. It's been 3 years now. I'm doing well. I'm excelling in my career. I have a great circle of friends who love me for me, not for what I can do for them. I've spent a lot of time in therapy unpacking the 22 years of conditioning I endured. It hasn't been easy. Sometimes I still hear that hiss in my ear, "You're just a leech." But then I remember that night. I remember the look on my mother's face as she realized she was drinking her own poison. I remember walking out of that hall, free for the first time in my life. Sometimes, to deal with a venomous snake, you have to turn its own poison against it. I don't regret what I did. It was ugly, it was vindictive, and it was necessary. It was the only way to break the cycle and show them that their control over me was finally, irrevocably broken. But that's just my side of the story. I know it was extreme. So I have to ask you guys one last time. After everything they put me through and what they tried to do to me that night, was I the asshole for switching the drinks and letting my mother poison herself at her own party? If you think I was justified in serving up that cold dish of revenge, hit that like button. If you think I went too far, let me know in the comments. So I can take it. And if you want to hear more stories about people finally snapping and fighting back against toxic family, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications. I'll see you all in the next story.